There, I just commented on an elderly priest that was saying mass, and I was remembering some of our random associations. My father was more involved with him than I was, but I think I met him first. And when I was 20, it was freezing, like below zero outside, and I was flaky. I was dressed for the spring. But I was also in need of housing at the time, as my dad was giving me rough slaps on the back. And I was a delicate little thing. And I guess, well, women kind of are more sensitive anyways. They feel things, like that. Whereas a boy or a man might not so much. I read all about that in Ilium and Ilium, the differences between males and females in our experience. So, rough slaps on the back with a strong how do you do. That's all it was. It was a strong how do you do, like a love slap. And he wouldn't stop. He just kept greeting me that way. And so I told the priest, I almost said his name, that from St. Bridget's, that I needed housing. And so basically I was voluntarily homeless under those circumstances. And I asked him if he could house me. They had a convent right in the same parking lot. And he basically just called me a flake and threw me to the pavement. Now, if I had been, he used those words. And because of the way he was treating me, I didn't accept any money from him. As if poor people have no pride, or women in distress have no pride. So basically, he was treating me like a walking, living, breathing mortal sin just because I was born female. And I know of a masculine woman that if she had asked for the same kind of help, he would have given it to her because she's masculine. So, I mean, yeah, the clergy don't treat ladies as they ought to be treated. They treat us like walking, living, breathing mortal sins because they made a choice for celibacy. And so basically, it's that broken mirror syndrome that actually that would be something even worse. That would be seeing other people as objects, dispensable objects. Or the inverted mirror syndrome, in which, I'm just an obstacle in the way of his super sanctified chastity. And if I don't have it together, if I'm not driving a Mercedes, there must be something wrong in my relationship with the Lord. That's, an example of that typical thinking that people who are born with a silver spoon in their mouths tend to resort to. And especially if they're priests, regarding women, that we are just living, breathing obstacles in the way of their super sanctified chastity, and that we ought to be shooed away as though we were walking, living, breathing mortal sins. And yeah, I survived, but not that he would have cared one way or the other if I had. Anyways, that was before my father got involved with him. And he tried to tell my father to get an annulment from my mother. And my mother contested it. And my mother won. She contested it. NPD to the rescue! NPDs will always win. And actually, my dad was NPD and my mom was borderline. I shouldn't be saying all of this, but that's how I got to be. She climbed too because um, borderline is more volatile, but your heart goes out to the borderlines, and there could be a combination of NPD, BPD. Usually is, I think, because borderline is in of itself some level of NPD, and then it gets worse and worse and worse and worse as it goes untreated. But you can climb all the way up to the worst case of NPD, which is sociopath, and then come back down again to um, lower levels of NPD. It is possible. Um, so anyway, yeah, NPDs can learn empathy, and BPDs also. Well, they have it anyways, but their suffering blinds them. If you if you're if you're in pain yourself, rolling around in the fire, you're not going to notice that other people are also in pain, um, watching you, or you're not going to perhaps not even notice if you're causing a fire for where NPDs expect you to light yourself on fire in order to keep them warm. NPDs. Light yourself on fire to keep them warm. A BPD would be um, screaming fire and then not noticing. Of course, you can't notice if you are hurting somebody else in the process because you're on fire yourself. Then after the burns are doused, then you realize what you've done to someone else in the process. An FPD expects you to light yourself on fire in order to keep them warm. So there's a difference between BPD and MPD. But BPD, because they're only self-absorbed in their emotional set of circumstances, um, is a certain level of NPD as well, because they're self-absorbed in their set of circumstances. Then once they come to, they realize what they've done, and they are sorry that they harmed another person. NPDs can be taught a certain amount of empathy, but it's not usually genuine. It's usually it's kind of debatable. It kind of depends on the spectrum. The NPDs usually, if they can be simultaneously benefited by showing you empathy, it's more of a manipulation tactic. It's more of a mutual survival tactic. Again, they're using their companion, as it were, as a broken mirror, because you're not their companion. You never will be. All you are is like, um, how some mirrors are better quality than other mirrors, and so you're basically an old dusty mirror to them, or a looking glass, kind of a cheap excuse for a looking glass, or perhaps an even broken and shattered mirror. That's, those are good metaphors, because there are varying degrees of value in the different mirrors, the different looking glasses that they hold in their hands. And so you might have kind of like a tarnished looking glass, or just a cheap excuse for a looking glass, or you may have a cracked looking glass, or you may have a shattered looking glass. And that is essentially the relationship with the NPD. Um, borderline is, we've already discussed this on borderline, I'm pretty sure. And the best analogy, again, I say, is basically a very severely wounded animal that's going to lash out and bite you if you mess with it because it's in pain and doesn't know what else to do. And then once the animal is, healed, worked upon by perhaps a vet, and the borderline will come around and really feel bad about they because they now understand what they've done. An NPD won't, not usually. So some of the ways, oh, I wish I could remember what I was going to say. My mind just goes a blank like that. I hate that. Let me put this on pause for a second. Oh, okay, that's where I was going with that. So, the Sam Vaknin treats NPD as PTSD. That's how he treats it. And I think he said he uses cold therapy or something, or does he use cold empathy or does he use cold therapy? Probably cold therapy, and maybe cold empathy is involved. But Sam Vaknin is a self-confessed NPD psychopath. And he has to work extremely hard every single day to fight against his inclinations, to work against his inclinations and to get along in society. And he is a therapist who treats, I don't know if he treats borderlines with dialectic therapy. I don't even really know what that is. But he treats, and I'm not even sure he treats psychopaths, does he? He may treat psychopaths. I'm not sure. But he's willing to treat, I think he mostly treats PTSD, but he's willing to treat narcissistic personality disorder these days. It's relatively new for him, I guess, depending on what we're calling new. Is he seasoned? Is he seasoned? He's probably about as seasoned as I am. And, but he's been in practice for a long enough time that, yeah, I think, I don't know. It's not his habit to treat, hasn't been his habit to treat NPD. I think it is relatively new for him. And he has had some success with it. So how long he's had success with it, and what are we calling new? That I don't know. At least 10 years maybe. And I guess he believes and he has seen that when treating narcissistic personality disorder as PTSD, that they do get better. And he believes that with cold therapy, he can cure them, absolutely cure them within a couple of months. So, but he says his cold therapy is dangerous and life-threatening, and that the individual going into it would have to understand that and sign a contract and all of this stuff before going in. They would have to really understand what they're getting themselves into, that this is dangerous and life-threatening, and yeah. And so, there's other treatments for PTSD with that are the same. Not the same exact type necessarily, but it could be. And it's treated in Mexico. So there's treatments for PTSD in Mexico. And they required that you bring a significant other, like a boyfriend or girlfriend, someone that you're intimately involved with and trust. Because otherwise you won't make it through. But I don't know if that's the same type of therapy that Sam Vaknin is talking about. So in Mexico, they're using some type of like an acid, I guess, like a psychedelic drug. And I don't think that's what Sam Vaknin is talking about. I don't think he is introducing substance necessarily. I think it's just an approach and a way of talking through behavioral thought and a certain amount of like psychotherapy that is involved. So, but he believes that he can cure a narcissistic personality disorder within a matter of a few months. That could be his narcissism talking.